When Patrick Williams went down with what was initially reported to be a minor injury in early January of last year, this of course after he was finally starting to string some consistent good games together. At the time, no one really batted an eye because he returned just 2 games later after being cleared to play. But when he did return on the 18th of January against the Toronto Raptors, he just didn't look right. He wasn't moving very well, was a little more passive on defense, and didn't have the same release on his jumper, and it looked like it just took a little more effort for him to get off a shot with his jumping ability. And when after just 4 games, the Bulls said, well, hold up, maybe we brought him back a little too soon, let's give him some more time to recover and heal that foot. And in a game where the Bulls were going up against the Blazers in Portland, Pat came out to the bench in a walking boot. And I remember at the time thinking, yeah, this is not good. This seems like yet another classic example of the Bulls downplaying an injury and not letting on to the public how bad it actually was. And of course, in classic Bulls fashion, it wasn't until a month later where we all thought Pat was going to be ready to go after the All-Star break that they would shut him down for the remainder of the season as Pat would undergo season-ending surgery. A huge blow after Patrick Williams was really starting to show some progress leading up to January when the Bulls were playing much better after that poor start to the year. And throughout the season, we really didn't receive that many updates on how Pat was progressing, just that he had the surgery, he's going to be going through the rehab process, and he'll be ready to go by training camp for next season. And then the offseason came and we were still getting vague reports on Pat and his status. Even AK at his press conference after the draft, he confirmed that Zach and Lonzo were both fully healthy and cleared to do pretty much everything, but wasn't as confident in his statement about the latest on Patrick Williams. Now, we did hear from the guys on the beat that met with Patrick Williams at Summer League on how his foot was doing and when he expects to get back out there, and Pat did say that he's still progressing nicely, that he fully expects to be ready to go by camp and the start of the season. But those were Patrick Williams' words, not words from the team or the team doctors. And you know, throughout this offseason, I've been thinking about what should be our realistic expectations of Patrick Williams going into this year. It's going to be his 5th year in the league. Even though 2 of his first 4 years he's missed considerable amount of time due to injury. He just got paid $90 million contract. He's 23 now. No more DeMar DeRozan, no more Alex Caruso, a new direction of a youth movement. We've all been talking about how this is Pat's year. No more excuses. This is the season for you to shine, to have a breakout season. But I've always said, I mentioned this when I was on the CHGO podcast a couple weeks back, without a clear indication of how the foot is doing, I don't know if I can say with confidence what my expectations are of Patrick Williams. I mean, we all remember how Zach looked when he kicked off a season not being fully healthy and still having lingering injury issues. He wasn't the same player. And I don't think we can expect Pat to have this breakout season if he's not 100%. And so the reason I bring all this up, and sorry for the long-winded intro to it, is because we just got some breaking news coming from Darnell Mayberry of The Athletic that Patrick Williams did experience some discomfort during the team's minicamp in Miami, which required some additional rest in recent weeks, which brings into question his availability to be ready to go by the beginning of the season, and of course, if he'll be ready to kick off training camp, which is next week. Now look, maybe this isn't that big of a deal when it comes to the standpoint of the Bulls season, because it's not like the focus is going to be on trying to win now and compete, unlike what the Bulls were trying to achieve last year. So in that regard, the Bulls losing Patrick Williams isn't going to be a setback from a winning games perspective, but this is a season where the focus is on the development of the young players, and Patrick Williams is arguably one of the most important pieces to that when it comes to his development, given the Bulls' investment they've put into him, not just from the beginning in selecting him with the number 4 overall pick, but of course the big contract they just handed to him. And for him to be having more setbacks, especially at his age, is concerning. And look, foot injuries are no joke, man, especially for big guys. You've had a lot of players' careers be drastically impacted from foot injuries where they see sharp declines in their play and careers cut short. Foot injuries, generally speaking, unlike knee injuries, aren't as serious, but they tend to linger and nag for much longer periods of time, to the point where the player can play through the injury, but not at the same level. And that's what really scares me about this latest update from Patrick Williams. And to be clear, by the way, evidently this minicamp that happened in Miami was actually about a month ago, where Pat was experiencing this discomfort and had to take a few weeks off to rest. So while the report has just come out, which timing of this being made public is odd, but whatever. The point is, it's also possible that since then, things have gotten better and he's back out there on the court, hasn't been experiencing any more pain and discomfort. But the fact that we haven't heard any updates on Pat and whether he'll be ready to go for camp next week leads me to believe there is a high likelihood that he won't be available at the start of training camp. But look, what has me concerned more than anything is we know the Bulls haven't handled these situations well in the past, keeping things under wraps, downplaying injuries when in reality they were much worse, case in point Lonzo Ball. And because we've already seen Pat miss a fair amount of time at the early stages of his career, and you now have this lingering foot injury where everyone is kind of being quiet about it, where we don't even hear about him having a setback at a minicamp until a month after it happens, makes me very skeptical on what this means for Pat's future. Obviously, I hope it's nothing serious. And even in Darnell's report, he indicated that it was a minor setback. After all, if you're experiencing discomfort and it's not officially training camp, yeah, it might be a good idea to just rest and not risk further damage before going into the season. But I just don't like where this is going. Yeah, part of it is because as Bulls fans, we all have a little bit of PTSD when it comes to promising young players experiencing injuries that derail their careers. And so I acknowledge that I might be overblowing this. But if we start out this season and Pat misses training camp, he misses the start of the year, and the timeline for him keeps getting pushed out even further and further, and you gave this guy a $90 million contract, oh boy, we could be in for another long ride of this team trying to get back to relevancy. It will open up a lot of opportunities for Modest Buzelis though, because if Pat isn't available, you'd have to expect that he's going to start, or even if he doesn't start, he's going to have a spot in the rotation and get a significant amount of minutes, with only him and Torrey Craig being the fours on this roster. But man, the Bulls, that defense, no more Alex Caruso, and if Pat isn't available, yikes. You could be looking at one of the worst teams in the league right now on that end of the floor, with Pat probably being the Bulls' best defender. We'll see how the rest of this week goes before we have media day next Monday, followed by training camp the day after. So let me know your guys' thoughts on this news. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.